The ultimatum. The Great Hall of the Galactic Assembly fell silent as Admiral Frank Carter walked to the center platform. His steps echoed across the massive chamber where representatives from over 300 alien civilizations watched with nervous attention. Some whispered to each other, others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The Admiral's face remained calm but determined as he approached the speaking position. Behind him, on the massive view screen, images of Earth's fleet appeared. The ships hung in perfect formation above the assembly station. Not positioned as a direct threat, but their presence sent a clear message that could not be ignored. Admiral Carter took a deep breath and looked around the room. His gray eyes moved slowly across the gathered representatives. The six-limbed Farkari delegates, the crystalline forms of the Telgen Collective, the floating gas-filled spheres of the Muri, and dozens of other species Earth had encountered since joining the galactic community 50 years ago. Representatives of the Galactic Assembly, he began, his voice strong and steady in the quiet room. I stand before you today, not as a diplomat seeking compromise, not as a trader offering deals, but as the messenger of humanity's final position. He paused, letting the translation systems catch up, ensuring every being present understood his words perfectly. For centuries after we developed faster-than-light travel, we humans extended our hands in peace. We shared our art, our music, our stories. We participated in your trade networks. We respected your territories and your customs. Carter's expression hardened slightly. And how were we repaid for this openness? With exploitation, with sabotage, with betrayal. Murmurs spread through the assembly. Several delegates stood up in protest, but Carter continued, his voice cutting through the growing noise. 3 human colonies completely destroyed, 15,000 lives on Station Horizon, 20,000 on New Montana, 35,000 on Proxima Centauri II. All wiped out while your governments offered empty condolences. He activated a small device in his hand. The view screen changed to show evidence of attacks against human outposts, recorded conversations between alien leaders planning embargoes against Earth, and scientific data proving deliberate sabotage of human technology. Trade agreements violated at every turn. Our technological innovations stolen and used against us. Our requests for investigation ignored or buried in endless committee discussions. A tall, blue-skinned delegate rose from her seat. Admiral, these are serious accusations that require proper. This is not a debate. Carter cut her off firmly. This is not a negotiation. My government has instructed me to deliver humanity's final warning to this assembly. He pressed another button, and the screen changed again. This time it showed a star system none of the delegates recognized. In exactly 6 days, we will provide a demonstration that will make our position unmistakably clear. All major powers will receive coordinates to observe from a safe distance. Carter's voice grew quieter, but somehow this made his words even more threatening. For too long, you mistook our patience for weakness, our desire for peace as fear. That ends today. The representatives of Earth will now withdraw from this assembly until after the demonstration. At that time, we will return with our terms. He stepped back from the platform as shocked voices filled the chamber. Before anyone could stop him, Admiral Carter and his small team walked toward the exit doors. Remember this moment, he said without turning around. This was your last chance to treat humanity as equals. What happens next is a path you chose when you decided we were expendable. The doors closed behind him, leaving the assembly in chaos as species who had never agreed on anything suddenly faced a common problem. Humanity had finally had enough. The incident. 6 months earlier, the colony Station Horizon had suddenly gone silent. For 3 days, Earth Command tried to make contact with the research station. All 15,000 colonists, scientists, workers, families, had stopped responding at once. No distress calls, no automated signals, nothing but complete silence. Captain Olivia Martinez stood on the bridge of the starship Defiant as it dropped out of faster-than-light travel near Horizon's last known position. What they found made her stomach turn. Where a bustling space colony should have been floating in orbit around the gas giant Kepler-22c, there was only debris. Twisted metal, frozen bodies, and radiation filled the space where people had lived and worked just days before. "Full scan of the area," she ordered, her voice tight with controlled anger. "I want to know exactly what happened here." The crew worked in shocked silence. Many had friends or family on Horizon. Security Officer Peter Donovan approached her with a tablet showing preliminary findings. "Captain, the radiation signature is consistent with Valkyrie energy weapons," he said quietly, "and we found pieces of hull material that don't match any human design." Martinez nodded grimly. "Keep looking. I want solid proof before we report back to Earth." Over the next 48 hours, the Defiant collected evidence from the wreckage. In his cramped office, Donovan worked without sleep, piecing together data from damaged computer cores and analyzing debris patterns. What he found was worse than anyone had imagined. It wasn't just the Valkyrie, he explained to Captain Martinez in her private quarters. He spread the evidence across her desk: recovered messages, flight patterns, energy signatures. 5 major powers worked together on this attack. The Valkyrie provided the weapons, but the Telsian Collective supplied the stealth technology. The Miri shared our defense codes. 2 other powers provided resources and diplomatic cover. Martinez stared at the evidence. Why would they do this? Horizon was a civilian research station. Donovan pulled up one last file. A recovered message between 2 alien commanders. "They were afraid of us, Captain. Horizon was researching more efficient, faster than light travel. If successful, humans would have advanced too quickly for their comfort. They decided we needed to be contained before we became too powerful." The trip back to Earth was tense and quiet. When they arrived, Captain Martinez and Officer Donovan were immediately taken to meet with the highest levels of Earth government. Their evidence was reviewed by military leaders, scientists, and intelligence experts. President Samantha Reeves called an emergency meeting of the World Council. For 72 hours, Earth's leaders debated their response behind closed doors. When they emerged, their faces were grim but determined. This wasn't the first attack. President Reeves announced to the military command, "We now have proof that New Montana and Proxima Centauri II were also deliberately targeted. This is a coordinated effort to slow human expansion and technological development." General William Harris, head of Earth Defense, spoke next. "Conventional military response would lead to full-scale war across multiple fronts. We would be fighting 5 major powers simultaneously." "Then we need an unconventional response," the president replied. "Something they won't expect." That evening, a classified message was sent to a hidden research facility beneath the lunar surface. The message contained just 3 words: "Activate Project Harbinger." In his small apartment overlooking the Pacific Ocean, Dr. Alan Wright received the call he had hoped would never come. He looked at his wife sleeping peacefully beside him, then quietly got dressed and packed a small bag. What he had created as a theoretical exercise was about to become humanity's most terrible weapon. The countdown to humanity's warning had begun. The discovery. Deep beneath the gray, dusty surface of Earth's moon, a hidden research facility hummed with increased activity. For decades, the lunar base designated Deep Horizon had operated in near-complete secrecy. Only a handful of Earth's highest officials knew of its existence, and even fewer understood the full scope of the work being done there. Dr. Alan Wright stood in the main laboratory, watching as his team prepared the prototype for demonstration. Tall and thin with tired eyes that had seen too little sleep over the past 30 years, Wright rubbed his hand through his graying hair. Beside him, Dr. Grace Miller adjusted settings on a complex control panel, her fingers moving with practiced precision, despite the gravity of the moment. "Is it really ready?" Wright asked quietly, so only she could hear. Miller nodded without looking up. "The simulations are conclusive. It works exactly as predicted in theory. Better, actually." What had started as pure theoretical research into quantum entanglement had evolved over 3 decades into something no one had anticipated. Wright had only wanted to understand how particles could affect each other across vast distances. Miller had been exploring applications in energy production. Neither scientist had set out to create a weapon. "The President's shuttle will be here in 20 minutes, said the facility's security chief from the doorway. "The emergency council is with her." Wright nodded and took a deep breath. How could he explain what they had discovered in terms that politicians and military leaders would understand? How could he make them see both the potential and the danger? When President Samantha Reeves entered the laboratory, the atmosphere changed immediately. Though not tall, she carried herself with a natural authority that commanded attention. Her eyes, sharp and intelligent, took in the equipment and the scientists with quick assessment. "Dr. Wright, Dr. Miller," she said, nodding to each. "I'm told you have something that might help us respond to the attacks on our colonies." Behind her, 5 members of Earth's Security Council watched with guarded expressions. One of them, Admiral Jones, looked openly skeptical. "Madam President," Wright began, "what we've created here wasn't intended as a weapon. We were researching how quantum particles maintain connections across space." Miller stepped forward. "We discovered that these connections could be manipulated to create cascading effects in matter with similar quantum signatures." "In simple terms, please," said the President. Wright nodded. "We can trigger a reaction in one location that affects something very far away. Specifically, we can initiate changes in the core of a star that will cause it to collapse, then explode in a precisely controlled way." The room fell silent. Admiral Jones stepped forward, face pale. "You're saying you can make stars go supernova from a distance?" "Yes," Miller confirmed. "The device is small, about the size of an old Earth filing cabinet. It creates a quantum bridge to a target star and introduces a controlled instability." "And you're certain this works?" the President asked. Wright moved to a large screen on the wall and activated it. It showed recordings of laboratory tests, computer models, and the results of a small-scale test conducted on an asteroid. "We've proven the concept thoroughly," he said. "We never intended to build a weapon, but what we discovered can't be undone. The science is valid." President Reeves watched the demonstration silently, her face betraying no emotion. When it ended, she turned to the scientists. "Could this be used as a targeted weapon? Could we control the damage?" Miller nodded slowly. "We can determine exactly how much of a star's mass converts to energy. We can make it anything from a small flare to a complete nova." The President walked to the window overlooking the main production floor, where technicians were assembling multiple devices. "How many can you build quickly?" she asked, her voice quiet but firm. "We have materials for 30, Wright answered. "But, Madam President, we need to consider—" "Dr. Wright," she interrupted, turning to face him. "I've seen the evidence. 5 advanced civilizations work together to kill our people. They're planning more attacks. I've made my decision." She looked around the room at each person present, her gaze steady and resolved. "Humanity will not go quietly. Prepare for a demonstration." The demonstration. The uninhabited Cygnus system had been chosen carefully. Located far from major trade routes but still accessible to diplomatic vessels, it contained a G-type star similar to Earth's sun and a collection of 9 planets. No intelligent life had evolved there. No colonies had been established. It was perfect for what humanity needed to show the galaxy. 20 observation ships gathered at the safe distance marked by Earth's military. Each vessel carried representatives from major galactic powers. The Valkyrie sent their war admiral and 2 scientists. The Telsian Collective dispatched a delegation of their crystalline elders. The Miri floated in their environmental chambers, their translucent bodies pulsing with nervous energy. 24 other species watched and waited, uncertain what the humans planned to show them. Commander Jack Wilson stood on the bridge of the Earth Ship Observer. His orders were simple: explain the demonstration, answer basic questions, but reveal nothing about the technology itself. "Welcome, representatives," Wilson's voice carried across all communication channels. Earth appreciates your compliance with our request to witness this demonstration. What you are about to see is not a trick or an illusion. It is proof of humanity's new defensive capability." He paused, letting the translation systems finish their work before continuing. "The star before you is approximately 1.2 times the mass of Earth's sun. No human ships are within the system itself. All human personnel are aboard this vessel or the security ships maintaining this perimeter." On the main viewing screen, the star shone brightly, its yellow-white light steady and unremarkable. Several alien representatives whispered among themselves, clearly skeptical about what the humans claimed they could do. "Observation will begin in 60 seconds, Wilson announced. "I suggest all vessels adjust their sensors and shields accordingly." He walked to a small console where a sealed container sat. Inside was a single activation key sent directly from Earth. Wilson entered his security code, placed his palm on the scanner, and turned the key when prompted. "This is a single device," he explained over the open channel. "We have deployed 27 others throughout the galaxy. Their locations are classified. This demonstration will show what happens when the smallest possible setting is activated." Across the gathered ships, sensors were trained on the distant star. Some looked for approaching weapons or hidden ships. Others scanned for unusual energy signatures. They found nothing out of the ordinary. Until it began. 8 minutes after Wilson activated the key, the time it took light to travel from the star to their position, the observers watched as a small dark spot appeared near the star's equator. The spot grew rapidly, spreading like an ink stain across the bright surface. Massive solar flares erupted around it. "What we are witnessing is a controlled collapse of the star's fusion processes," Wilson explained calmly as gasps and exclamations filled the communication channels. "The quantum instability is spreading precisely as calculated." Within minutes, the star's surface was churning with massive disturbances. The dark area covered nearly a third of its visible face. Then, with startling suddenness, the star's outer layers bulged outward in a massive eruption. The sensors on all ships registered the tremendous energy release. The star had not gone fully supernova, but a significant portion of its mass had been converted to energy in a precisely controlled partial collapse. The resulting explosion sent radiation and stellar material streaming outward in a spectacular but contained display of power. "The effect has been deliberately limited," Wilson continued as alien representatives watched in horrified silence. "If activated at full capacity, the entire star would have collapsed, resulting in complete destruction of this system. We chose the minimum setting to make our point while preserving most of the star's structure." When the initial shock passed, the Varkari War Admiral was the first to speak, his voice tight with barely controlled fear. "This is impossible technology. No civilization has such capability." "And yet you have all witnessed it," Wilson replied simply. "The demonstration is complete. Earth's representatives will present our terms at the Galactic Assembly in 6 days. We trust this evidence of our capabilities will ensure those terms receive proper consideration." As the observation ships prepared to depart, a simple message was transmitted to each of them. This was not the action of a species that wants war. This was the action of a species that will never again allow itself to be victimized. The terms. The main chamber of the Galactic Assembly felt different when Admiral Frank Carter returned 6 days after the demonstration. The usual noise and movement had been replaced by tense silence. Representatives who normally ignored humans now watched Carter's every move with careful attention. The fear in the room was almost a physical presence. Carter walked to the central platform with measured steps. Behind him, 4 other humans carried sealed metal cases. They placed these on the table before moving to stand at attention behind our admiral. The Earth fleet still hung in orbit above the station, unchanged in position but viewed very differently now by those who watched. "Representatives of the galaxy," Carter began, his voice carrying easily in the quiet room. "You have all received reports of our demonstration in the Cygnus system. You know now that humanity possesses technology that can destroy stars or merely damage them as we choose." He looked around the room, Meeting the eyes of key delegates. I return today, as promised, to present humanity's terms. These are not suggestions. These are not starting points for negotiation. These are the conditions under which Earth will continue peaceful relations with the galactic community. Carter opened a small tablet and read from it clearly. First, Earth and all current or future human colonies are now declared sovereign and inviolable territory. No military vessels from any non-human power may approach within 1 light day of these locations without explicit permission. He paused, allowing the translation systems to complete their work. Second, all attacks against human settlements, including the destruction of Colony Station Horizon, New Montana, and Proxima Centauri II, will be considered settled. We will not seek further justice for these acts, but they will be recorded in human history forever. A murmur passed through the assembly. Many had expected demands for reparations or executions of those responsible. Carter continued before any could interrupt. Third, any future action against humanity, whether direct attack, economic sabotage, or technological theft, will trigger immediate consequences. The nature of these consequences will depend on the severity of the offense. At a signal from Carter, the 4 humans opened the metal cases. Inside each was a quantum-locked data core, its blue light pulsing steadily. These data cores contain 3 things, Carter explained. First, complete evidence of the conspiracy against Earth, including communications between your governments, military orders, and financial transactions. Second, technical data proving our claims about the Harbinger devices. Third, the coordinates where these devices have been deployed throughout the galaxy. Assistants began distributing the cores to representatives of major powers. Some received them reluctantly, others with obvious fear. To be absolutely clear, Carter continued, we don't want your territories. We don't want your resources. We don't want your submission or your servitude. We simply want to be left alone to develop our civilization without interference. He stepped closer to the edge of the platform, his voice becoming less formal and more personal. Humanity sought peace when we first ventured to the stars. We still desire peace, but we will no longer ask for it. We will ensure it. The Telgian representative rose, crystal body gleaming under the chamber lights. How can we trust that you will not use these weapons offensively? Its translated voice echoed. You claim to want peace while threatening the entire galaxy. Carter nodded as if he had expected the question. Because we have had this capability for 3 years and have used it only once, as a demonstration after suffering 3 genocidal attacks. If conquest were our goal, we would have acted very differently. He looked around the chamber one final time. Earth will establish a permanent embassy on this station. All diplomatic channels will remain open. We welcome trade, cultural exchange, and scientific cooperation. But the age of treating humanity as a minor power to be contained or eliminated is over. As Carter stepped down from the platform, the assembly remained silent. The terms had been delivered. The message was clear. The galaxy had underestimated humanity for the last time. We hope, Carter said quietly as he walked toward the exit, that this is the beginning of a new and better relationship between all our peoples. The resistance. Not everyone accepted humanity's ultimatum. In the weeks following Admiral Carter's address to the Galactic Assembly, most civilizations reluctantly acknowledged the new reality. Trade slowly resumed. Diplomatic messages were exchanged. The galaxy held its breath, adjusting to a fundamental shift in power. But within the Valkyrie combine, anger outweighed fear. The Valkyrie had dominated their region of space for over 2,000 years. Their military traditions celebrated conquest and strength above all else. To submit to human demands was unthinkable to their high command. War Admiral Krex stood before the Valkyrie Military Council, his gray scales gleaming in the dim light of the ancient chamber beneath their capital city. I have analyzed the human demonstration thoroughly, he declared to the 12 council members. Our scientists believe it was an elaborate deception. No species could develop star-killing technology without our intelligence networks detecting it. Around the circular table, the council members listened intently. Their species' 4 eyes allowed them to watch both Kreks and each other simultaneously, a biological trait that had helped make them formidable warriors and politicians. "What of the evidence in the data cores?" asked Council Elder Zeris, her voice raspy with age. "Fabricated," Kreks replied confidently. "The humans are clever with information technology. They created a convincing illusion in the sickness system and supported it with false data." He activated a holographic display showing technical analysis and probability calculations. "The timing is suspicious. Just as we begin operations to contain human expansion, they suddenly reveal an impossible weapon. It is clearly a desperate bluff from a species that knows it is outmatched." The council deliberated for 3 days. In the end, they'd reached consensus. The Valkyrie would not bow to human threats, real or imagined, but they would act carefully. Instead of a direct assault on Earth, they approved a limited strike against the human outpost on Proxima Centauri. The colony had been rebuilt after its destruction 2 years earlier, now housing 5,000 people studying the unique plant life of the planet. "A measured response," Kreks assured the council. "If the humans truly have these weapons, they would not risk using them over a minor outpost. If they do nothing, their bluff is called, and the galaxy will know the truth." 15 Valkyrie warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel near Proxima Centauri. They quickly destroyed the orbital defenses and began precision bombardment of the surface colony. Within hours, the human presence was reduced to smoking ruins. The Valkyrie fleet departed, leaving behind a simple message beacon: "The strong do not surrender to threats." 23 hours later, on the 3rd planet of the Valkyrie home system, something happened that would forever change their civilization. It began with small tremors in an uninhabited desert region. The tremors grew stronger, spreading across continental plates. Deep beneath the surface, a harbinger device that had been secretly planted months earlier activated. The device had been programmed with surgical precision. It did not destroy the planet. It did not even make it uninhabitable. Instead, it triggered specific fault lines and volcanic systems across 1/3 of the Valkyrie homeworld. Cities crumbled. Coastal regions sank beneath rising waters. Volcanic mountains that had been dormant for millennia erupted with terrible force. 100 million Valkyrie were displaced, though the careful calibration of the device meant that direct casualties were relatively low. As the Valkyrie people struggled to comprehend what had happened, a message arrived at every communication terminal in their government. "This was the minimum response possible," Admiral Carter's recorded face stated calmly. "Your attack on Proxima Centauri killed 5,000 humans. We could have destroyed your entire homeworld in retaliation. Instead, we demonstrated precise control and restraint." His expression hardened slightly. "There will not be another warning. The next attack against any human settlement will result in the complete destruction of the aggressor's home star. We do not make threats. We make promises." When the message ended, War Admiral Kreks looked out at the burning horizon from the emergency command center. His belief in humanity's bluff had cost his people dearly. "Send a message to all ships," he said quietly to his communications officer. "Stand down all operations against human territories. Immediately." The new order. 5 years passed since humanity delivered its ultimatum to the galaxy. Slowly, the relationships between Earth and other civilizations changed. The immediate fear and resentment gradually transformed into a cautious respect. The galaxy adjusted to the new reality. Human colonies expanded carefully, pushing outward from their core territories. Earth ships traveled freely through regions that had once been dangerous for them. Trade agreements were honored fully for the first time. The Harbinger devices remained in place, their exact locations known only to Earth's highest command. No further attacks against human settlements occurred. The lesson of the Valkyrie had been clear enough for the rest of the galaxy. In her private garden overlooking the Pacific Ocean, Dr. Grace Miller sat watching the sunset. The brilliant oranges and reds reminded her of the demonstration in the sickness system years ago. At 76, her hands now showed age spots and slight trembling, but her mind remained as sharp as ever. "Beautiful evening," said a familiar voice behind her. Dr. Alan Wright walked slowly toward the second chair, leaning slightly on a cane. The decades of work on Project Harbinger had taken a toll on his health, but he had insisted on seeing it through to the end. "I wasn't sure you'd make it for our annual meeting," Grace said, smiling at her old colleague and friend. Alan lowered himself carefully into the chair. "I wouldn't miss it. 5 years since the ultimatum. Seems like a good time to reflect." They sat in comfortable silence for several minutes, watching the sun sink lower toward the horizon. Birds called to each other as they settled for the night. "Do you think we did the right thing, Alan?" Grace finally asked, the question that had haunted both of them for years. Wright watched the last sliver of sun disappear. "We survived. After 3 genocidal attacks, we survived." He paused, considering his words carefully. "History will judge whether our response was just. But I know this, without Harbinger, humanity might have been extinguished." "And the price?" she asked softly. "Living with the knowledge of what we created, carrying that responsibility." He looked at his old friend. "Better that burden than extinction." Across the galaxy, relationships continued to evolve. The Telgen Collective proposed a joint research project with Earth scientists. The Muri opened their ancient libraries to human scholars for the first time. Even the Valkyrie, after rebuilding their damaged world, established formal diplomatic ties with Earth. On the edge of known space, the Earth ship emissary approached a solar system that showed signs of advanced civilization, but had never been contacted by the galactic community. Captain Lisa Chen sat in her command chair, reviewing the first contact protocols that had been carefully revised after the Harbinger era began. "All systems ready, Captain," reported her first officer. "We're detecting radio transmissions consistent with a technological civilization on the 4th planet." Chen nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility. These new beings knew nothing of Earth, nothing of the recent history that had reshaped the balance of power. They deserved to meet humanity at its best. "Prepare the standard greeting package," she ordered, "and open a channel when we're in range." On her screen appeared the carefully crafted message that would be transmitted in mathematical sequences and basic visual formats before any translation could be established. "We come from Earth. We seek friendship and knowledge. We value peace above all things, but we will defend ourselves without mercy if threatened. This is both our promise and our warning." As the emissary moved forward into new territory, Captain Chen thought about the dual nature of humanity's message to the stars. It was honest, at least. Earth had learned through painful experience that in a dangerous galaxy, true peace came not just from extending a hand in friendship, but from having the strength to ensure that hand would never be cut off. The warning and the welcome were 2 sides of the same human determination: to survive, to explore, and ultimately, to find a place in the cosmos where humanity could fulfill its potential without fear. I should mention that the story outline I provided was designed for 7 parts, as you originally requested. However, I'd be happy to create an 8th part to continue the story. Here it is. The legacy. 20 years had passed since humanity's ultimatum changed the galaxy. The children born after that day knew only a universe where humans were respected and feared. In schools across Earth and its colonies, young people learned about the Harbinger Project as a turning point in history, the moment when humanity secured its place among the stars. In the rebuilt halls of the Galactic Assembly, a special gathering was taking place. Representatives from over 400 civilizations had come together for an unprecedented event: the retirement of the Harbinger system. Admiral John Rivers, now the head of Earth's Space Command, stood at the same podium where Frank Carter had delivered humanity's warning 2 decades earlier. Unlike that tense day, today's atmosphere held a careful optimism. "Distinguished representatives," Rivers began, his deep voice carrying across the chamber. 20 years ago, humanity faced extinction. We responded with the most powerful defensive system ever created. Today, we believe the galaxy has changed enough to take the next step forward together. Murmurs spread through the assembly. This announcement had been unexpected. Earth has decided to deactivate and recall 12 of the 27 Harbinger devices, Rivers continued. This represents our commitment to the peaceful cooperation that has developed over the past 2 decades. The chamber erupted in surprised conversation. Many representatives turned to their colleagues in disbelief. When the noise settled, Rivers raised his hand. This decision was not made lightly. The remaining devices will stay in place as insurance against any return to past hostilities. But we view this partial disarmament as an important symbol of trust. From her seat in the Earth delegation, Dr. Grace Miller watched with mixed emotions. Now in her 90s, she had lived long enough to see her creation both protect humanity and begin to be dismantled. Beside her sat the grandson of her old colleague Alan Wright, who had not lived to see this day. My grandfather would have approved, young Daniel Wright whispered to her. He always hoped Harbinger would eventually become unnecessary. Grace nodded slowly. He understood better than most that the best weapons are those you never have to use. After the assembly, a small ceremony took place aboard the Earth ship Guardian. Representatives from 7 major powers witnessed as Admiral Rivers activated a special sequence on a secure console. On screens around them, they could see distant monitoring stations confirming the deactivation of the first Harbinger device. A historic moment, said the Telgian ambassador, crystal body shimmering with blue light that indicated respect in their culture. We acknowledge Earth's courage in taking this step. The Varkari representative, a young female named Zuri whose family had lost their ancestral home in the punishment of their world, watched with particular intensity. When the deactivation was complete, she approached Admiral Rivers. My people have not forgotten what happened, she said honestly. But we have learned from it. This action today helps heal old wounds. Back on Earth, in a small classroom in New Chicago, a teacher named Paul Davis explained to his students why this day was important. Before Harbinger, humanity was vulnerable, he told the wide-eyed 10-year-olds. After Harbinger, we were safe but isolated by fear. Today begins a new chapter, one where we remain strong but extend trust to others. A small girl raised her hand. But what if someone attacks us again? Davis nodded seriously. Then the remaining Harbinger devices would protect us. But the hope is that by taking this first step, we show the galaxy a better path forward, one where weapons like Harbinger eventually won't be needed at all. As night fell across Earth, many people looked up at the stars with new thoughts. The galaxy that had once seemed so threatening now held allies, trading partners, and even friends. Humanity had secured its future through strength, but its greatest achievement might be finding the wisdom to know when that strength could be partly laid aside. The Harbinger era wasn't over, but its gradual ending had begun. And in that careful balance between power and restraint, humanity had perhaps found its most important lesson about surviving among the stars.